Hey guys, good morning. It is the middle of July, and so I thought I would take you around and show you what this garden is looking like right now. There's a lot of really great stuff happening, and I'm excited to show you and I'm excited to share it with you. So, if you're new here, my name is Kiera. Feel free to call me Q. And we are gardening in California in Zone 9B. We are also about to get into our summer stride finally, and so we have a bunch of days coming up that are going to be 100 degrees essentially, which is usually how our summers go. We've been getting lucky with some, 80, mid 80 to high 80-degree weather, but it looks like now we're starting to get into the thick of things. So the other part of this is I want to show you before things get really damaged with the heat. So let's go start at our normal spot up on our patio and take a look at our blackberries. So the blackberries are behind me, but really quick, I wanted to stop at this green stalk. This is our strawberry green stalk. It has seen some things this year. In the beginning of the season, I planted it out with strawberries that we brought with us from our old house, and it did really, really well up until the point where we had a ton of rain, and I forgot to water this because it's underneath our patio roof, and I was thinking, oh, everything's getting watered. This was not. And so I basically killed all of it, but I've been nursing it back to health, what plants I could, and a lot of them are dead, a lot of them are gone, but we've been able to kind of resurrect some of them. And this week, we got our first two little strawberries off of this. They were really puny and very sad looking, but they were good. And so we are one step closer to having a completely rehabbed garden stock, which I'm really proud of. And I will say too that most of the reason why I'm really proud of that is because for so much of my life, I had this story about myself that I kill plants and I can't keep them alive. So the fact that I pretty much killed everything there and was actually able to bring it back, like that is such a testament to me for one, having a little bit of faith in myself and thinking that, maybe I can fix this. That's huge for me. But also just learning new skills over the years, and the fact that that even feels possible is really amazing. So anyway, behind me is our blackberry patch. Move so you can see it's a pretty long hedge. So in our last tour, I was talking about how I wasn't sure if the blackberries were ready yet. They had just started to turn black, and right after the tour we tasted like a couple of them. I think we tasted like 4 of them and they were really good. So we ended up harvesting a very small handful of them. Well, now we are getting to the point where we're getting pretty good sized bowls of them. And so these are producing really, really well. What we're doing with them, we're saving some for just like fresh eating in like chia seed puddings and stuff like that for breakfast in the morning. We like to do chia seed pudding with homemade granola and some sort of fresh berry on top in the summertime. So we've been doing that. We've also been freezing a lot of them so that we can use them in smoothies throughout the rest of the year. One thing we really want to do at some point is we would love to be able to have enough to do jelly, probably not jam, just because I'm not a huge fan of seeds in like my jams and things like that. But we would love to do jelly at some point. And this year we were hoping that we would be able to forage blackberries and get enough of them to make jelly. I don't think that's happening this year, but that's okay because we can always do it next year. But so far, these plants are producing really, really well, and it's definitely enough for us to have some to eat fresh and to freeze for smoothies. So it's working out really great. Here's our herb bed. We have a huge sage plant in the front here. We have some thyme on the side. This is all green onion, and then there's a little rosemary in the back there. We did have cilantro here that we let bolt and completely go to seed, completely dry out for coriander seed. And I actually just took that out. You can see some of the stalks that I just laid down on the ground there. I just took that out a couple days ago. And so come, closer to the cooler months, we'll do more cilantro. I'm thinking about doing dill also. and we'll kind of like clean this up and also fill it out again. If you are brand new to gardening or just kind of unsure and looking to kind of start with something small, or you only have a limited space, I highly recommend starting with an herb bed and or some sort of herb garden, whether it's containers or in a bed like this altogether, anything like that. Herbs are really easy to grow for the most part. I've struggled with mint and everyone says mint is easy to grow, but I have not figured it out yet. So I kill my mint every year. But anyway, herbs are a great way to start just because so many of them are easy to grow. And it really gives you a sense of fulfillment when you go into a grocery store and see how much those like itty bitty packets of herbs actually are. So the other day we bought dill because we were making pickles out of all of the cucumbers that we had. And this like itty bitty small package that was like this big was $3. And for $3, I could buy probably, if not one pack of seeds, multiple packs of seeds of dill, grow a ton of it myself for the next few years. And that's not even counting seed saving and stuff like that. And so when you start to garden, especially with starting with an herb bed, something really easy, you can put it right off the side of your house so it's easily accessible. You can put it in all of your meals. It makes you feel really good to put herbs that you grew in all of your food. And it's one of those things that'll actually save you a bunch of money just because herbs are so expensive in the grocery store and they're not nearly as good in the grocery store either. So if you're looking for a place to start, I highly recommend an herb bed. And then around our herb bed, we just have various potatoes. These were not potatoes that we grew with any sort of intention this year. It was basically like we had potatoes that were sprouting on our counter at various times. So we threw them in pots to see if we would get something out of them. And you can see this one is like fruiting on the top and stuff. So we're just kind of letting them go and do their thing. And if we get potatoes, great. If not, that's fine too. This is our apricot tree and our peach tree. They're both basically just done for the season. They both had issues this year. And so we're going to be doing a lot of just caring for them in the fall and winter to hopefully have healthier trees for next year. But for right now, they're just resting. Next to the trees, we have a grape arch, and it's packed with grapes, but it is getting a little sick. So let me show you what's going on in here. So you can see in here, there are a ton of grapes. It's just covered. And let me come in here. There's a bird's nest right up there. We think it's mockingbirds, and so I try not to come in here too much to not mess with them, but you can see there's a ton of grapes in here and they're starting to turn color, which is really awesome. These are really good grapes. And here comes Remy. Hey buddy, what you doing? He's ignoring me is what he's doing. But anyway, so we noticed that a lot of the leaves in here were yellowing, and we didn't really remember them yellowing this soon in the season last year, but we could be just misremembering because this was around the time we had just moved into this house. And so we're trying to remember if once the grapes start to ripen, the leaves yellow. We don't think that's what happened last year. And then there's something else. Let me get a close-up so that I can show you what's going on here. So you can see right here, the stems are also looking pretty funky. And we don't know what that is. It might be fine, it might be nothing. But if you happen to know grapes and you know what that is or what it could be, let us know. But you can see there's still a ton of grapes in here. They're loaded everywhere. And the other thing too is we weren't able to get a good look at these grapevines like this last year because they were on this itty bitty arch really close to the ground, and we essentially had to kind of like dig under them to get the grapes. So this year we decided to build this arch, which is a 16-foot cattle panel and some T-posts on the ends. And so we've never been able to actually come and look under the grapes before. And so it might just be that we're just seeing more now because there's more to see because we can accessibly get under here. But I don't know. So if you know anything about grapes and you happen to know what's going on, or if you're like, yeah, that's no big deal, let us know. I am curious. We've been doing some research on it too, and we haven't found anything yet from Google, but we've posted it in like Reddit and stuff like that just to see if anybody happens to know. And then over here we have our citrus trees. This we think is a navel orange tree, and fruit's doing pretty well. We got nothing off this tree last year when we moved in. We had no idea what kind of tree it was. And then we randomly, in the middle of winter, found one navel orange in the middle of the tree. And it looked like it could have just been like tossed in there. So we don't know, but it's starting to look like this probably is a navel orange just because of how big the fruit is. We're hoping that it's not a grapefruit because we're not huge fans of grapefruit. And then this is our clementine, our cutie tree, and it's doing fine as well. In the very back of our garden, we decided to use the extra space to put in a tomato trellis. And so we have a 16-foot cattle panel here, and these are very promising looking Amish paste tomatoes, and some of them are really big. I'm excited for when these actually start to change color. So this is a Howden pumpkin. It's supposed to be kind of like a jack-o'-lantern pumpkin, and I've never grown it before, so we'll see how it goes. This is a very happy basil plant in the back. And the other day I came out here and spent some time just cleaning up all the plants and also moving all the grass away from the plants. We still have to come back here with a weed whacker and really like clean up this aisle because this is nuts. It's pretty hard to get the mower back here, and there's a lot of like pieces of wood and stuff like that. So we normally do this with the weed whacker. So it doesn't look like I spent a ton of time out here, but I did. But anyway, we have some Amish paste tomatoes, and then we have cherry tomatoes that are starting to ripen, and we've actually gotten some fruit off of these. So these are Super Sweet 100 cherry tomatoes, and look at some of these clusters. That's huge. We've never gotten clusters that big before, and these are pretty loaded up, so I'm really happy with these. So further down, the cherry tomatoes are right there, and then these are a few Amish paste, or these are a few Roma tomatoes that we had, and they're doing really well too. They're not getting very tall, but there's still a good amount of fruit on all of these, and so I'm really excited about that. I did see yesterday that this one is starting to blush, which means because these are determinate, all of them are going to start to blush pretty soon. So really looking forward to that. And now onto our raised garden beds. To just kind of give you an overview, we have three 4 by 16 foot garden beds here. We have three 4 by 8s in the middle, and then on the very end here we have another three 4 by 16 garden beds on the other side. So starting here with this one, this is our healthiest zucchini plant, and it has grown out of the bed a good, foot or so. The end of the bed is right there, and it's just kind of kept on going. I did trim around this too so that we can clean up more of this here. So I clipped just some of the leaves that were covering some of this grass so we can actually edge out here. But this thing has been very healthy, and it's finally starting to slow down a little bit, which we're actually really grateful for. On this side of the garden, we have two zucchini plants and two yellow squash plants. And then we have a couple more smaller ones on the other side of the garden in the other 16-foot beds. But these have been our main producers, especially this guy behind me, and one of the yellow squash plants in particular. And at this point, we are tired of squash. So we've eaten it in so many different ways. We've grilled it, we've pan fried it, we've put it in everything. We're trying to eat squash in basically almost every meal that we eat has some sort of squash in it. And so we're tired of it at this point. So what I've done is I have shredded, measured out, and frozen a lot of it so that we can use it for zucchini bread or, putting it in like pastas and things like that. Whatever else we're going to make throughout the fall and winter when the squash is gone. But we're at a point where we're pretty done with squash. So, and there's a ton of it in our freezer. And I'm one of those people that I have a really hard time pulling out plants when they're healthy, just because I'm not used to having like beautiful, healthy plants like this all the time. Had we've gotten zucchini before in previous years, but not like this. This is by far the best zucchini year, and now it's become a problem. But I was watching one of Jess's videos yesterday. I think it was her latest garden tour from Roots and Refuge Farm. If you are not aware of how obsessed I am with Jess. So I was watching one of her videos, and she was mentioning that they were going to take out some of their squash and then just replant it. And I thought, that's a great idea. Never thought of that before, because one, it gives you a break from squash as that new one is coming up. And two, it's a good use of the space because I can't put anything that is cold season in here yet because we have too many hot days ahead of us. And anything that is kind of a warm season thing will kind of take too long, or it won't grow the way I really want it to in this kind of space. So I was talking to Andrew about it, and what we might do is we might pull out some of our older zucchini and yellow squash plants that are kind of slowing down at this point, and we might just take them out, use them as compost while they're still healthy, which is another thing that we're usually not able to do because our plants get sick, and that's why we have to take them out. But we might do that and then plant a new one so that we get kind of like a fall harvest of zucchini, and that would be great because I think we need a little bit of a break right now. It's been a great problem to have, but we're ready for a new problem. So past the squash, we have this okra plant right here, which we've actually gotten a few okra off of. It's still kind of slow actually, but I think once our weather heats up to those 100-degree days, all of the okra plants are going to take off. And we have 4 of them in here, so there's 2 here and then 1 more right there. And I think they're all just going to explode once it gets hotter. We have some cucumbers that are doing really well, and I can see some like right there that needs to be taken out. But let's get through this garden tour first because I want to do this before it gets hot, and I'll come back and harvest some things. And here's an okra where I'd probably take this just because if I waited another day, it'd probably be too big for us. So I like to get them pretty young here. And we have started to get a little bit of bug pressure on this. We've gotten a little bit of aphids on here, but it hasn't been bad yet, so we're not too worried about it. Here's another of our really big, healthy, or mostly healthy zucchini plants. So the thing about this one is it has slowed down a ton, and all the fruit is starting to get really short and stubby. And so I think this is, if we take one out first, we'll probably take this one out first, just because it seems to be on its way. But the bees really love it still. They're all over these things. This gigantic plant right here is Armenian white cucumber. This is our favorite one. It's actually a melon, but it's really good for hot climates because the cucumbers don't get bitter. And so we've eaten a ton of these. We made pickles out of them. We're gonna make some relish as the season goes on. And these are definitely winning for us. I think this is the time of year where things like this get really fun because they start to be harvestable at eye level. So I'm 5'5.5", so basically I'm 5'6". But I love that these are right here, you know, where you can easily see them and easily pluck them. I think that this makes it so fun to have them as tall as me or taller because they're going all the way to the top of this trellis now, which I love that. I just got distracted by a bee. And then at the end of this cucumber, so there's actually 2 cucumbers on here. The other side of this is a Persian gherkin, which is starting to get pretty bitter for us, but it was an experiment to see if we could, how many we could get this year, and we did get some, which was great. But anyway, you can see the Armenian white has kind of taken over both sides of this trellis, and I'm okay with that because it is our favorite one. And then so it goes all the way to the other edge, And then next to it, this is one sunflower. This is an Autumn Beauty sunflower. I didn't know sunflowers grew with this many stems, but I'm really excited to see what happens with this once it's ready to flower. And peppers are one of those things that I've been working on. I love growing peppers, but I've been working on getting better and better about it every year. And these are actually doing pretty well. So you can see we got a lot of peppers on things. Some stuff is a little bit slow, which these I'm kind of worried that the blossoms might fall off in the heat. So we might not get much off of those like this. These are all blossoms, so I'm hoping that because they're shaded a little bit here, they might be protected, but we might lose all of those blossoms in the next week. But then our Italian and Edgevarsky peppers are doing really, really well. And those are both kind of sweet peppers. So I'm excited to see what we get at the end of the year because I planted so many pepper plants out here. There's more back there. And then here's the back of our noodle beans trellis, and we've been getting actually a lot of noodle beans. So all of the burgundy like hanging things, those are Chinese noodle beans, and we eat them a lot in stir fry. And on the other side of this trellis, I'll show you the magic that's happening over there. So I don't know if you can fully see it. I'll do a close-up too, but this is a noodle bean trellis. There's noodle beans on both sides of this, and what I really wanted was for them to just be hanging down here. I think it's like super romantic and dreamy looking, and that is happening. So let me see if I can get a closer up because it doesn't look like you can quite see with the light with me standing in front of it. So let's see if we can get a better look at it. Okay, so here's the noodle bean trellis, and they go all the way to the top. You can see them hanging down up there, and they connect over in the middle. And then this guy's gone rogue. I need to tie that up. But you can see here that the noodle beans and the flowers are starting to go higher and higher up. And so eventually those will go all the way to the top of the trellis. But you can see it's, they're more full down here right now. But they'll go all the way to the top, and they will hopefully just hang down right from the top in the middle. So I'm really excited about that. And then, so you can see there's some right here, and they're starting to get a little higher. And then over here is where we've been harvesting most of them. And yesterday we finally got enough to make an actual meal out of at one time. So that's great. But yeah, you can see there's some there and some there. And so my goal is for this whole thing to look like that. And then here's the other side of this Autumn Beauty sunflower, which the Persian gherkin cucumbers have decided to grow up the sunflower since the Armenian white cucumbers are taking over their trellis. And so there's a little one right there. There's another one right there. And I've clipped multiple cucumbers that have just been hanging off this sunflower. So here's another one right here. And so it's been a really great kind of stand for these cucumbers accidentally. And here's the back of the mostly Armenian white. And you can see it's loaded up in the back too. There's one right there. There's a little guy. There's one back there. There's more. Where is it? Right there. So yeah, we've gotten a lot of cucumbers. And we're turning them into pickles. And then these are Blue Lake pole beans. So these pole beans have been doing really poorly. They look kind of dried out. The flowers are falling off, what little blossoms they had. They're just not doing well at all. And I don't know if it's something that I did wrong. I don't know if it's something where they're just not happy in the spot, but everything else around them, well, that's not totally true. A lot of the other things around them are fine. So I don't think it's the soil, but they are not happy. And then we have pole beans on the other side of the garden that are doing really well. So I don't think it's the seed either. So I'm not sure what's going on with this particular spot, but we haven't gotten anything off of them. And I feel like I'm just really bad at growing pole beans, but I've said that about enough things where it just means that I'm going to work on it next year. So here's a close up. You can see that these just look really like crispy and like the flowers that they had have kind of fallen off and dried out and all of that kind of stuff, but everything around them looks super healthy. We've tried fertilizing these more, and weirdly enough that seemed to make it worse, so I'm not sure what's going on here. I might pull them out, I might not. We'll just kind of see. And then right next to it we have a honey nut squash. And this is why I was saying everything else around it looks good, but except for one thing, it's this thing. So the honey nut is starting to change color and it's starting to turn orange, which is great. But we don't remember, we've grown this for a few years now, and we don't remember the leaves dying off quite this quickly. And so there's, a few fruit on this, and maybe we just haven't had great success in the past, and this did happen because our soil wasn't very great in the past. And I'm wondering if this is supposed to happen like this, like if it's supposed to be kind of like how pumpkins, the vines die off, but it seems a little too early. So anyway, I don't know what's going on with this corner, but everything in the middle seems happy. Like there's another Armenian cucumber and it seems super happy. And then there's a pepper right here that also seems super happy. I don't know. This is a yellow squash that's been doing pretty well. We've gotten pretty steady squash off of this one, but it's not our healthiest plant. And then over here, we have another, oh, hey buddy. Over here, we have another honey nut, and this one looks way better than the other one. And it's a little bit behind, but it is also starting to change color. And I kind of feel like it's supposed to look more like this. This plant looks just way better, and it's also still producing new fruit at the bottom. So I think this is more of what it's supposed to be like right now. And then here we have more of those pole beans, the Blue Lake pole beans, and they look so much better than the other side. So again, I don't know what's going on with that spot in particular, but it's very strange and we need to figure it out. This is our Gigantor yellow squash. It kind of spans all the way across this 4-foot bed. It doesn't quite make it to the other side, but it is in the walkway over here. So it's about 4 feet wide at this point. And this is the one where you can see right here, the squash are starting to be a little bit like green on the ends, kind of like they're cross-pollinated with a zucchini. You can see a handful of them over there too, where they're kind of green on the tips, but they still taste really good. And we've gotten way more yellow squash than 2 people need, even with giving it away from these 2 plants. Also interplanted in the garden on some of the empty spots of the trellis, we had planted, replanted. This one was a butternut that didn't come up the first time, but we have smaller squash or smaller pumpkins and squash and cucumbers and watermelons and stuff like that, so that they hopefully will start to grow up later in the season than everything else, so that we always have something on the trellises. On the front of this bed we have a Thai basil, which is lovely and doing exactly what I wanted. In this corner we have a little marigold, and then most of the front of here is peppers. On this side of that squash is sweet peppers, and they're all starting to get to be a really good size. So this makes me really happy. Look at this guy. He's loaded up. And then this is where we have all of our hot peppers. So this is jalapenos and poblanos. Some of these are labeled, some are not. So like this one, pretty sure that's a jalapeno. And this one, pretty sure it's a jalapeno. We like to actually pick ours when they're red, so they have a little bit more flavor. And then there are things like this guy, which Oh, this one's a jalapeno too, actually. So they're starting to come on really nicely. In the back of our garden, so these are our 3 8-foot beds. Those are the other 3 16-foot beds, just for reference. In the back of the garden, we decided to do this little pumpkin patch. We have on this side, these are all sugar pie pumpkins. So they're the smaller ones that we'll use for decorating, and then we actually eat them also in like pumpkin pie and pumpkin recipes in the fall and winter. And then on that side, those are Howden pumpkins. So those are 2 more of those jack-o'-lantern size ones. And they've been really happy back here. So I'm glad that we decided to put this in. So all of these pumpkins were extra plants actually. So we double seeded in on the trellises or in the different parts where we knew we wanted pumpkins, just because I wasn't sure if the seeds were going to come up or not. I've grown the sugar pies before, but I've never grown the Howdens before. So we just kind of double seeded just to make sure we got something. And these were all extra plants that needed to be moved. And so I ended up transplanting them. And I think only 2 died, which was great because that was too many anyway. So I was kind of hoping that some of them wouldn't make it. But this pumpkin patch has been doing really well for us so far in the season. So I'm really happy with it. These 3 middle beds here is our kind of like our cut flower garden. And then we have some tomatoes on the end here. These are Roma tomatoes and they are loaded up. I attempted to do a Florida weave on these for the first time and I've since just completely let it go. So, which is totally on me and not against Florida weave. It just didn't work out for me. So, anyway, we have a lot of fruit on these and waiting for them to get bigger to start blushing. And then this bed is mostly cosmos. And I've been deadheading a lot, but they grow really fast. And so we've just had an endless supply of cosmos. There's a couple more plants right there. So these have done really well and we put them in a lot of bouquets. Here are some new straw flowers. These bloomed, I want to say last week, and they are so pretty. So if you've never grown straw flowers before, let me see if I can get this. So I don't know if the mic is picking that sound up, but they sound papery, almost like they're already dry, which is how they got the name straw flowers. And so I'm really loving these too. I think they're really beautiful. And then we have another kind here, which I also really like. And then in this middle bed, we have, again, the cosmos, and then this is our biggest zinnia patch. So over here we have 3 varieties of zinnia. These are the main 3 I grew this year. These are Moulin Rouge zinnias, which I've grown before the last 2 years, and I really love them. They were the first specialty variety that I grew. These are giant purple zinnias. And then these are Senora zinnias. And these 2 are new to me this year, and I really like them. And then this is a zinnia just from like a mix that I had. And I love that one also. So we've been putting a lot of zinnias in bouquets for our house and then giving away to people too. And then this is our little patch of golden nugget tomatoes. These were the first kind of like cherry that we got. I've been harvesting off of these every day. I think every day, maybe skipping a day or 2, but I've been getting handfuls and handfuls off of these. So yeah, this is another attempt, a valiant attempt at first to do Florida weave, and then I just kind of gave up. You can see the string that's just tied around them, and that was months ago. So I haven't done anything with them since. I've just let them grow. And this bed in the front is just kind of a weird hodgepodge of things. So this was a random, oh no, I think this one was a Senora zinnia. And then this was Sweet Alyssum. I put 1 little plant in because I had extra space, and it was about that big. And you can tell that 1 little plant of Sweet Alyssum has grown all over here. We have some amaranth that we've been putting in to vases. And then on this side is where we had our really beautiful Snapdragon patch earlier in the year, or earlier in the season. So I've talked about these Snapdragons in multiple videos, and basically what happened was I've never grown these before, and so this was a complete experiment. Turns out I grew them at the complete wrong time. We ended up getting lucky with our weather, so we had Snapdragons, one, at all, but two, longer than we were supposed to because our weather was cooler this spring. But they didn't get as tall as they were supposed to, which I was actually totally fine with that because, again, never grew them before, had no idea what was going to happen. And these were beautiful until about a couple weeks ago, right before we had our first heat wave of like 100-degree weather for a couple days. I came out here and I took every Snapdragon that looked even remotely good out of here because I wanted to be able to enjoy them instead of them all just dying from the heat. Well, some of them have started to come back in here. Some of them are starting to look pretty good again, but for the most part, they don't look great. And they also are starting to get bugs on them, which might be thrips. I don't know. I've just seen other people get that on their Snapdragons, but they all look kind of dry and sad now. And so I might take some of these out. I might save them for seeds for next year. I'm not sure. I do have more of these seeds to grow next year. Or what I might do is cut them down and see if we can get them to grow again in cooler weather. So I might try all of those things. I haven't decided yet, but I kind of wanted to let you know how I think about my options. and I always have trouble deciding on what I want to do with the garden, in case you haven't noticed yet. But those are the things I'm always thinking about. And usually I end up doing some hybrid of all of the options just because I'm always curious to see what works and what doesn't. So these Snapdragons don't look great right now, but a couple weeks ago, they were really awesome. And that was because they were actually growing in the season, or in the weather, I should say, in the weather that they really liked. All right, so now on to our last three 16-foot beds. So starting here, this is a zucchini plant that's done pretty well for us. It was planted, I mean, everything on this side was planted a few weeks after the first plants that we looked at. Oh, the bees are loving this flower. There were just 3 bees in there. But anyway, so it was planted after those other ones, but it never produced quite as well. And it's actually slowing down because of the heat, I think, now too. The other thing I noticed about this is the leaves are starting to get crispy on the edges. And this is something we saw in our old gardens as well. So you can see. I don't know if that's like a nutrient deficiency or if it is sun damage or it's disease. Like, we don't actually know. But this is another one where, because it's already slowing down anyway also, it might be a candidate for just being removed and replanted too, so that we can get something later in the season. Down here in the tomatillos, this is 2 tomatillo plants, which is kind of wild. It's only 2. They're covered in flowers, which is great. And we do have a couple tomatillos on here. I've seen, I think, 4. So they are starting to fill out. I mean, this one's filled out the husk almost completely. So it might be ready here pretty soon. And it'd be great to be able to make some salsa with these. And in here also, there are some trio bush beans that I planted really just to fill out the space. And the tomatillos have covered them and fill out the space even more. So I actually really like this when things are kind of growing together. And there's some flowers in here. I haven't seen any beans. I mean, me and green beans, I don't know. But there's also like some peppers in here too. Oh, and then this is an Armenian cucumber. And this is the first one that we would get cucumbers from on this side of the garden. So that's exciting too. These are more super sweet 100 cherry tomatoes. And we've gotten a couple off of these plants here, but there are more that are ready to be picked. And for these tomatoes, usually at the tops, I will do strict pruning of a single leader all the way up to the top. But this year, I've just kind of let things go and like, I'm pulling off some suckers, but I've left a lot of them. And that's just how the garden is this year. And I'm okay with it. So this is the other side of that Armenian white cucumber plant. And the last couple days, these haven't been big enough to harvest, but I have a couple here that I've been watching, like this guy and that one back there. I think I'm going to pull those off today. One thing I really wanted to do with having our full garden built out now, as far as the beds, one thing I was really interested in this year was seeing the different growing conditions, because we have essentially what could be a couple like microclimates in here. And so that side of the garden, the 16-foot beds on that side get a ton of sun. And then on this side, it's a lot more shaded. There's a building here, and then we have huge trees on this side of the garden. So on east and west, they get some morning shade and some afternoon shade. And so things like cucumbers, I wanted to see if our cucumbers did better on this side of the garden because they got more shade. And so maybe they last longer, maybe they don't get as bitter, maybe we get more productive plants. I don't know. And so those are all things that I really wanted to test out. And so that's why on this side of the garden, it has a lot of the same stuff as that side. Plus there were some things like watermelons that we just put in later that are only on this side. And so there are cucumbers, all the cucumbers are on that other side. We have little plants over here that are acting as that experiment. And so we're going to see, does this telegraph or does this Armenian do better on this side? Does it not matter because it does better in hot weather anyway? And same thing for the telegraph improved and the Persian gherkin. So that's kind of what the idea is here. Part of it is seeing like, should we just grow cucumbers or watermelons on this side of the garden? Or, can we do kind of season extension where we just grow them earlier on the other side? Those are all things that we're learning as we're building out this garden, and now we have the whole thing available to us to use. This is the other patch of the Blue Lake pole beans that I was talking about that looks really healthy. There's a basil in here that we've been picking off of and making pesto. But you can see these look so much better. They're taller, healthier in general. The flowers haven't fallen off. And so this might be one of those microclimate things too, where maybe they are just happier on this side of the garden. Maybe they have some sort of other weird condition, wet growing conditions happening on the other side. I don't know, but this is what these plants are supposed to look like. Here we have a bunch of peppers. Oh, and then in that little t-shirt hammock back there is our biggest watermelon. And it is much bigger than last week. Let me see if I can reach across here. Oh yeah, that's pretty big. It's getting hefty. So I just tied like a t-shirt scrap around it just to kind of help support it a little bit so it's not so heavy. But there's, a couple more there. There's some little guys here. So we'll see how many of those are pollinated also. But that one is very exciting. And this is going to be a yellow watermelon that's kind of like a personal size. Some beautiful Moulin Rouge zinnias here. This is the back side of the farmer's market tomatoes that we got. This one is the yellow brandywine, which is a slicer. And then this one is the Hungarian heart. Oh, and they're actually heart-shaped. I never noticed that before. Okay, so there's a few fruit on here. So I've talked about this in previous videos too. This Hungarian heart was one that I got both of these from the farmer's market from a lovely vendor, super sweet woman. But this Hungarian heart has really struggled and it's been very sickly. And what I did, I think it was 2 days ago, I came out here and I just took all of the sickest foliage off of the plant. I was trying to still leave some of the leaves, as many of the leaves as I could, so that the fruit was still shaded a little bit, hopefully, from the sun and from the heat. But I ended up having to take a lot of leaves off this plant, and some of them, the stems just kind of like crumbled in my hand. They were mushy and gross. And so I cleaned this up mostly because it was also getting the plant next to it sick. So I'm hoping that taking the sickest parts of this plant off will help the rest of it kind of like at least finish off the fruit that it has, if not produce more fruit and continue to grow in a healthy way. Because sometimes with tomato plants, even though they look really terrible, you'll still be getting new foliage and new fruit off the top of it. That's perfectly fine. A lot of times people deal with things like blight and disease of different kinds on their tomato plants because they are grown in humid areas, and so the plants just don't last very long. It's not humid here, so we have very dry days. We don't have to worry too much about foliage early on in the season, just like collecting moisture. It just doesn't really happen in our climate. And so this was something else. I'm not sure what it was, but it was something else. Hey, baby. Hi. And so anyway, I cleaned these plants up, hoping that it'll make a comeback, hoping that it'll at least finish off the fruit that it has, and then also hoping that it helps the plant next to it not get as sick either, because the plant next to it is doing really well. So this is that Hungarian heart that I was talking about that was pretty sick, and it doesn't have a ton of fruit on it. It has just like a couple things. But this is the yellow brandywine right next to it. And, you know, there's some like cat facing on some of these, but some of these look really good. And I've never really grown slicers before, so I'm excited about these. I think this one's starting to blush. So yeah, it's doing really well. There's fruit all over this one, and I wanted to at least give it a fighting chance because it was doing better than the other one. Our eggplants are starting to flower. That looks like it might be an eggplant eventually. So nothing yet, but these plants are still really little. They had a really hard time. They went in about an inch or two tall and really struggled, and it was all on me. So still waiting on eggplant, but I'm okay that they're taking longer. And then we have some peppers that are doing really well. This is another honey nut squash. It's behind the other ones intentionally, and you can see the fruit is still green on this. Here's a yellow squash, and like that one, it's ready to be harvested. This one right here. But this plant's, it's small, but it's doing really well. And I actually really like the speed that this one's going at, especially since we're so overwhelmed with squash right now. And in this front bed, this is something I've been so excited to show you. This is 2 junior yellow sunflowers with a ton of heads on them. And I've actually clipped a bunch of sunflowers off of these for bouquets. And I've invited people over to come get more because you can see they're starting to be a little spent at this point. But these have been beautiful, absolutely amazing. And I just spent hours staring at them from the window of our house. Look at that. This is 2 flowers. This is 2 plants. Look how pretty that is. And then it's mixed in here with a watermelon that is starting to have more fruit on it too. You can see there's a little guy right there. This makes my heart sing. I'm so happy with this. These sunflowers are my favorite flower, so this is stunning to me. And then there's basil mixed in that we've been using for pesto also. Oh, it's finally starting to flower a little bit. I'm going to pull this off. Usually I try to do this when we can actually use the pesto for something, but to me it's better to just get some of these off so that we can continue to use it for right now. Oh, and then here is a second dahlia that has started to flower too. This is the first time I've grown dahlias. I grew all of them from a mixed pack from seeds, and they haven't done very well. I only got these 2, but they're still better than nothing. There's another little watermelon there. These are 3 Amish paste tomatoes that are, you know, puny and scraggly, but still giving us some fruit on here. So I'm hoping that the other 2 will catch up, but if not, that's okay. Here's another view of the sunflowers just because I'm obsessed. Then last but not least, this is our second in-ground tomato trellis. These are all Roma tomatoes, and they're very short. These are only like 2.5 feet tall, but they're loaded up with fruit. The fruit is small, but the plants are healthy. So this is a lot of fruit. This is definitely more tomatoes than we've ever grown before. So either way, I'm happy. And they go all the way down. And then here's the other side of that trellis. We have an apple tree here. We have a ginormous borage plant right here. This is one plant. And then on the end here, I put in some flowers because I didn't know where else to put them. And then I put in this Howden pumpkin. Oh, and it looks like this one is starting to vine out. And so I'm gonna get some gloves on and actually direct this one to a place where we want it to go. But that's exciting. Figure I'd sign off this video in my new favorite place in the garden. So, surrounded by my sunflowers. In front of me, I have one of the honey nut squash plants that is just covered in bees, and it's really beautiful. And I love this garden so much. So, thank you so much for watching this tour and going through my garden with me today. I love that I get to share this with you. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I'd also just really love to know what's going on in your garden, whether it's a garden like this, it's an even bigger garden, or it is a pot on a patio, because that is 100% where we started, especially when I was sure that I had a black thumb and could not keep plants alive. And this is all just from, having a little bit of faith and a little whispering of, we'll just try it and see. And now I'm surrounded by beauty and my heart feels so full. So anyway, before I get too emotional about this and get too far in my feelings, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for just your support and your enthusiasm, because it's so great that gardeners get to come together and nerd out together and talk to someone who is as excited as they are about their new sunflowers or, this new thing that they grew. So thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. And until next time, happy growing. Bye.